A 47-year-old truck driver left his home in Kingston before midnight Friday, November 18, to collect and transport supplies to Hanover. By 5 o'clock the following morning, less than halfway through the trip in St. Anne, Dane Brown was dead, a bullet to the chest. Good day. This is the latest episode of the Frankly Speaking Jamaica podcast, episode 49. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we encourage you to comment on the channel too. Crystal Cameron and Desmond Richards share in this podcast. But first, my commentary. Frankly speaking, the story of 47-year-old truck driver Dane Brown is not about murders in Jamaica, of which there have been a sickening, deplorable total of more than 1,300 so far this year. It is rather, frankly speaking, a story about how we must stop and reverse the worst traits of humankind that are threatening to submerge our society and define who we are as Jamaicans. And what we are becoming is, frankly speaking, not what we were or should be. Either while Brown lay dying or was already dead, trapped in the cab of the Leland truck, people from communities near Faith's Pen, St. Anne, looted the truck of its contents. We do not know whether they knew the driver was dead or if they knew what had happened while the truck had crashed and overturned. For after Mr. Brown was shot, apparently he lost control of the panel truck. It ran off the road, up an embankment, and then overturned. We know they looted nearly $1.4 million worth of food items belonging to Facey Commodity Company. They made off with flour, cooking oil, butter, condensed milk, cornmeal, and other basic food items. And that's not even the point. Police, to their credit, went through the nearby community, arrested the woman and the minor, who had some food items from the truck. On further investigation, police released them and have now charged a man. But, as the police say, all the others, the dozens of other thieves, are keeping their mouths shut. They are not assisting the investigation, nor have the police found the killer. But that's another matter. This is not the first time people have looted a vehicle while the driver or passengers are there trapped or dying or dead. It has become too common in recent time, with reports of people rifling through the bloodied bodies of victims in vehicle crashes and looking for the wallets or the phones. We have to begin to condemn this type of behavior and appeal to people in communities to get a grip of right and wrong and to stand for right. The looting of the truck on which a Jamaican man had been murdered on the job was not because of hunger. It appeals to the worst side of us. It tells of a depraved community where no one was willing to say stop. No one was willing to ask, what are we teaching the children? These mob events ensure that everyone stealing knows that his neighbor is a thief. And I'm making the link with the way we live, the disorderly chaka-chaka existence we have in Jamaica, and it's spread to everywhere, leaving just a few islands of decency in a sea of slackness and dirty living. Now, I'm one of those appealing over the years publicly for an improvement on our public behavior, law and order. Last week, I emphasized that leadership matters, that leadership has been lacking, not just in the politics, resulting in this Jamaica going to pot, and not just with crime, for we are more than the sum of our murders. And this relates too to our public spaces, a theme to which I keep returning. Yes, people have turned our bus stops into their business places from which they sell whatever. They turn public car parks and roadside parking spots into spaces for stalls. They erect stalls of any type, size, and material anywhere. We see sidewalks becoming stands for fires, for cooking. We double and triple park at plazas and piazzas and bus stops. We turn intersections into drop-off and loading bays for public vehicles. And it's each man for himself, leaving the whole area a mess. It doesn't matter whether that's Mandela Park or Crossroads or Ocho Rios or Montego Bay. The various agencies, principally the municipal corporations, are not functioning. They are not carrying out the basic regulation of open and public spaces and order in the spaces for which they are responsible. Last week, speaking at his party's annual conference, JLP leader, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, again spoke to this disorder and slackness overtaking major towns and parish capitals. It's not the first time he has made the observation of public disorder and lawlessness spreading, and yet it only gets worse. Lord knows, we have many issues, but this too is important, bringing some order to the way we conduct our affairs, making Jamaicans know that people like us can and used to have decent, clean public spaces, and that it's not for us to scavenge overturned trucks with the body of a fellow Jamaican inside of it. So here's what the Prime Minister said.
This government will launch a comprehensive program of redeveloping our parish capitals and rural townships. We will make them drivable. We will make them walkable. We will restore their historic assets. We will ensure that people can feel proud, safe, and secure in these areas. We will ensure that these areas become centers of economic activity.
Prime Minister, that means nothing if you don't get the relevant minister and the superstructure of the Ministry of Local Government to get to work. And I'll come back to that. Now, here is Crystal Camp.
I found myself thinking about hunter-gatherers who live in various states of primitiveness. Their life is consumed with trying to find something to eat. You can imagine this makes them very inefficient. There is also the problem of not cooking a lot of the food that they eat. When you have to spend hours chewing your food, that's hours that you're spending not doing something else. You know, these people don't even know how old they are because they don't have a calendar. Inefficient use of time and energy. They're stagnated. In order to develop, you have to release yourself from a certain degree of tedium. You have to simplify certain things so that you have time to do things like develop a written language, to find more innovative architectural techniques, to even do things like discover the bloody wheel. Ultimately, the character of a people have damn near everything to do with how an area develops. When I think about that in the context of the great migration waves out of Jamaica, 80% of our university graduates, and then of course because of Manley's communist flirtations, and my life that is overwrought with tedium, my life that is a dodge and weave planned around how much hassle I expect might come with any given task or service that I need to utilize locally. The reality is, when we lose 80% of those people, what we have is what is left. We lose the best of our citizens, and we have to get on with what is left. And I feel it. It is obvious in this society. When we say the average Jamaican, we all know what we mean. If we had even 60% of that 80, the average Jamaican would mean something completely different. And furthermore, you would feel it in your life, because the absence of these 80% of the people, that means they're not applying to work in your institutions. They're not managing your restaurants, your bill collection outlets, serving as more competition in the system to drive performance. Instead, this specter of Jamaican bad mind, which is just a terrible, disgusting manifestation of how envy cripples our society, is what is allowed to flourish. I remember this bonkers conversation where my manager, who had been trying to have sex with me, he let me know that he was not going to reprimand another employee who threatened to hit me in the face because I was a prima donna, no one liked me, and he felt that was my fault. And when I confided that to the girl who I worked alongside, she explained to me that it's simple things, like for example how I came in 45 minutes before her. By the time she'd arrived, I'd already made all the preliminary calls, and things like that were bound to to make people see me as a diva and bound to make people not like me because I was being too extra, too enough. The underbelly of that is something that's clear to understand when you see it in more primitive societies, where people are careful not to do things like optimize their farming lest they get a better yield than their neighbor and invite their bad mind and their scorn. Because if you do better for yourself, it is not a statement on you wanting something for yourself. It's not a statement of you wanting to be your best. It's a statement of you wanting to show up that you're better than me. This is how a lot of Jamaicans think. That's the underlying thing with the bad mind. It's a reprobate way to think. And if you are a business owner, that is unfortunately the majority of what you have to choose from. Of course, you're going to have troubles expanding, developing, when you're inefficient at the level that you are now. Would our government be more accountable if there's a larger local population who actually understand what an economy is? Would I have less experiences on a daily basis where I call or visit a business place and instruct the employee on how to do their job? If I didn't have to repeat myself over and over basic simple instructions because I am neck deep in idiots, how much more efficient could I even be for my own customers? How much more efficient could you be if it didn't take 2 hours to get something done at company's office or an hour and a half to get something done at the tax office? If you didn't have to just expect that people were going to be late for every meeting, if you could call a business place and reliably expect that the phone would be answered, how much more efficient could you be?
That's Crystal Cameron, Creative and Managing Director of Crystal Cameron Design. And now to Desmond.
Murders have been committed in Jamaica for the past 21 years. That is roughly 1,000 murders every year for the past 21 years. Over the same period, billions have been spent improving the security architecture in the country. As a matter of fact, this government says it has spent $60 billion in 6 years trying to improve the security architecture. So lots of money has been spent, yet the blood continues to flow. 1,000 murders every year for the past 21 years. Something is wrong. And the policymakers must see that the strategies that they have been using over the years are not reaping the desired results. States of emergencies, SOEs, the formation of squads, they have all failed to stop the blood from flowing in the country. So, it is time for the policymakers to replace their political hats with their thinking hats. We need new strategies. And this is a work for both the government and the opposition and citizens. We must think of new ways to address the crime problem in the country. It can't be that we continue to dust off whole policies, use them, yet we are not getting the results. And then we end up, the politicians end up cursing each other. This requires collective thinking, new thinking. Let us do it for Jamaica. Let us start now in addressing the crime problem.
That's Desmond Richards, journalist and founder of internet station Rebel Radio. And now, Endgame. It's amazing how civil Jamaican men, particularly men, are to each other at this time over football. They'll break out into a joke over the team you are demonstrably supporting, or they'll hitch a conversation over a team which you both support. The fever of World Cup is sweeping across the land, even though I've noticed far fewer Argentinian flags than when the World Cup started last Sunday. And there's a profusion of Brazilian flags, more of course, after last week. My favorite vendor in the market left her provisions to go watch Portugal on Thursday. So work habits have changed. Well, remember, my pick before the championship started, in this order: Belgium, France, and Brazil third. Thank you for joining us again on this Frankly Speaking Jamaica podcast. Please like, share, and if you haven't yet done so, please subscribe. I'm Franklin McKnight. Until then.